Okay, so after the digestion of carbohydrates into monosaccharides, it will then undergo glycolysis. So glycolysis is a metabolic pathway by which that glucose or C6 molecules is converted into two molecules of pyruvate, which is a three carbon atom molecule. So, yung isang glucose, makakaproduce siya ng two pyruvate molecules. Kasi nga, six molecules, so mabe-breakdown siya into two, three carbon molecules. So, six carbon molecules then. So, this is here, chemical energy in the form of ATP is produced. So during glycolysis yan. NADH reduced coenzymes are also produced. Okay. So this metabolic pathway function is almost uh, in almost all cells. So it occurs in almost all cells. Okay. So what is the glycolysis of glucose? So meron tayong 10 steps. Okay? So isa-isahin natin. So of course it will start with glucose, and the first step is phosphorylation. So from the name of the reaction itself, so addition of phosphate group, phosphorylation. So glucose will turn into glucose 6-phosphate. So ayan, sa 6 carbon atom ng ating glucose, nadagdag yung phosphate group. And of course, with this is possible only if there's a presence of enzyme hexokinase. Okay? So recall that all kinases are responsible for the transport of phosphate. So, saan ba manggagaling yung phosphate na yan na dadagdag sa glucose? Of course, it will be coming from the ATP, and if that ATP gives one of its phosphate group to the glucose, it will then become ADP. Kasi nga natanggalan nga siya, nag-give nga siya, nag-transfer nga siya ng isang phosphate group. Okay? So the product of step 1 is glucose 6-phosphate, which is eventually going to enter the step 2 of this glycolysis, which is known as the isomerization. Okay? So for isomerization, the glucose 6-phosphate will then undergo a rearrangement in its structure such that from glucose na alam natin this is an aldose, magiging a ketose. It will then become a fructose in the form of, it will then become from an aldose going to ketose from glucose na naging fructose. Okay? So, na-rearrange lang yung carbon niya. So, instead na nasa second carbon atom ang carbonyl niya dun sa glucose, magiging mapupunta sa first carbon atom because of that isomerization. And of course, the enzyme that is responsible for this step 2 is phosphoglucoisomerase. Okay? So, from that, step 3 will then occur. So, that fructose 6-phosphate will undergo phosphorylation. Again, may phosphorylation na naman tayo dito. So, that fructose 6-phosphate, so kung kanina iisa lang yung phosphate niya, magiging dalawa na bisphosphate. So, that would be fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. The phosphate group is not only attached on the 6th carbon atom of the fructose, but rather nandun din siya sa first carbon atom. And of course, the source of phosphate will be the ATP, and once it gives off one of its phosphate, it will then become ADP. It will leave the phosphorylation reaction as ADP. Okay? So, ang ating enzyme here is phosphofructose, this time kinase. Okay? Because may fructose tayo dyan kasi nga ang nag-undergo ng step 3 is a fructose. So, the enzyme is phosphofructose kinase. Okay? Now, as you could see, step 1, 2, and 3 are ATP consuming stages. Okay, so these 6 carbon atoms, kasi glucose nga yan, no? Puro glucose and fructose, these are 6 carbon atom molecule. They are ATP consuming kasi nga gumamit sila ng ATP for the two phosphorylation reactions, step 1 and 3. Now, Moving on to step 4, that fructose 1,6 bisphosphate will undergo cleavaging. So pag sinabing cleavaging, magbe-break down, may breaking down of structure dun sa kanyang molecule. So fructose is a 6 carbon atom. So upon cleavaging, magiging ito na siya, dihydroxyacetone and uh, glyceraldehyde. Okay? So, yung una, 1 muna. 1 glyceraldehyde, 3 phosphate. Okay? So, we all know that acetone has 3 carbon atoms as well as glyceraldehyde has 3 carbon atoms. Kaya, yung 6 carbon atom natin, na breakdown siya into 2 during the cleavage process for step 4. And the enzyme responsible for this cleavaging is an aldolase. Okay? So, kanina sa fructose 1,6 bisphosphate, dalawa ang kanyang phosphate group. Pero kapag nag-break siya, cleavaging will occur, yung isang phosphate group will go to the dihydroxyacetone, kaya magiging dihydroxyacetone phosphate, and the other phosphate group coming from this fructose 1,6 bisphosphate will go with glyceraldehyde, and that would be glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. Okay? So, ulitin natin. After step 4, the products would be 1 molecule of dihydroxyacetone phosphate and 1 glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. However, pagdating kay step 5, which is an isomerization, so sabi ko kanina 1 pa lang yan ha, 1 glyceraldehyde. The product of step 4, particularly the dihydroxyacetone, will undergo isomerization reaction. In the presence of triose phosphate isomerase, so this is triose phosphate isomerase, this dihydroxyacetone phosphate, being a ketone, will undergo restructuring or isomerization in its structure para maging isang glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. So kaya dun sa ating structure ay naging 2 glyceraldehyde kasi one is a product of step 4 during the cleavaging, and another would be the product of conversion of dihydroxyacetone phosphate during isomerization reaction. Kaya naging 2 glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. Okay? So that's step number 5. Now, for step number 6, that 2 glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate will undergo step 6, which is an oxidation and phosphorylation reaction. So again, oxidation, remember sa Krebs cycle, basta pag may oxidation, meron tayong redox intermediates in the form of NAD or NAD+. So this will then undergo redox. So bakit dalawa ang NAD plus na magiging NADH? Kasi nga, dalawa yung ating reactant, dalawang glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. So in the presence of glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate dehydrogenase, okay, this one will be converted into 1,3 bisphosphate glycerate. So dalawa pa rin ha, dalawang molecule pa rin siya. Okay, so from here, the NAD plus will react with 2 inorganic phosphate then in order for it to produce the 2 NADH plus 2 proton ion or 2 hydrogen ions. Okay? Moving on to step number 7, whatever is the product of step number 6. So the 2,1,3 bisphosphate glycerate will undergo phosphorylation, but this time it will no longer be the addition of phosphate group, rather it would be involving the removal of phosphate group. So the transfer of phosphate group will be from the bisphosphate glycerate to the ADP. So ADP naman ngayon ang pagbibigyan ng phosphate para maging ATP. Okay, so this step number 7 will use phosphoglycerokinase. So in order for it to produce a 2 molecule of 3 phosphoglycerate. Okay,
So kanina, bisphosphate, dalawang phosphate group, pero nagbigay siya ng 1 phosphate kay ADP, kaya naging ATP. Bakit 2 pa rin ang ADP na kailangan natin at bakit 2 ang ATP na maproproduce? Kasi nga, 2 molecules yung pinag-uusapan natin na glycerates. Okay? Now, from that step number 7, next is step number 8, which is isomerization. From being a 3-phosphoglycerate, magiging 2-phosphoglycerate. So, na-move yung ating phosphate group from third carbon atom into the second carbon atom, and with the help of phosphoglyceromutase. Okay, so this is an isomerization catalyst. Okay, now moving to step number 9, that two phospho two molecules of 2-phosphoglycerate will undergo dehydration. Dehydration is the removal of water molecule from their structure, and the enzyme should be enolase. Okay, and the product would be still 2 molecules of phosphoenol pyruvate. Okay, but dalawang molecule ng water ang na-remove kasi dalawang glycerate ang nag-undergo ng dehydrogenation para ma-produce ang dalawang molecule pa rin ng phosphophenol pyruvate. And the last step will be the conversion of these 2 molecule of phosphoenol pyruvate into a 2-molecule pyruvate. 2 molecules of pyruvate. And the name of the process is the phosphorylation of ADP, which is the last step. In this last step, we are going to use a pyruvate kinase in order for that phosphate group to be transferred to the ADP so that magiging ATP siya. Okay? So, again, may dalawang mga molecules dyan because we are referring to 2 molecules of reactants. Okay? So, from the 6 carbon atom, one molecule of 6 carbon atom glucose, after undergoing these 10 step processes, maproproduce natin ang 2 molecules of pyruvate which contains 3 carbon molecules. So kung kanina sabi natin, the first 3 stages are ATP consuming stages. Okay? Pagdating naman kay dun sa last 5 steps or last 6 steps naman, these are ATP production. Okay? So from step 6 to step 10, so that would be the last 5 pala. Okay? So these are ATP production kasi nagpo-produce tayo ng ATP. Okay? And of course, these last 5 steps are involving 3 carbon atom stage. So, tatlo lang yung carbon atom kasi nga nag-breakdown na nga sila during the cleavage reaction. Okay? So, as a summary, summary natin would be from one glucose molecule, we use 2 NAD. So, na-produce din natin yung 2 NADH. Okay? And then, the 2 ADP na ginamit natin dun sa first 3 stages. These 2 ADP, bakit 2 na lang yung na-produce, ay yung na ginamit? Okay, so remember, gumamit ka ng 2 ADP sa step 5, pero gumamit ka rin ng dalawang ADP sa step 10. So all in all, that would be 4 sana. 4 ang ginamit. Pero, bakit na-cancel out? Bakit naging 2 na lang dito sa ating summary? Kasi nga, kung pupuntahan natin dito sa first 3 steps, nakaproduce siya ng 1 ADP sa step 1 and 1 ADP sa step 3, nakaproduce siya ng dalawa. Pero gumamit ulit siya ng dalawa. So, parang na-cancel na yun. So, nakaproduce siya ng dalawa, gumamit siya ng dalawa, so cancel out na yun, 0 na yun. And kaya, eto na lang ang parang na-balance na. So, 2 ADP ang ginamit. Okay? And then we also have the use of 2 inorganic phosphate. And of course, we are producing 2 moles of pyruvate and 2 NADH
plus 2 ATP and 2 hydrogen and 2 water molecules. Bakit dalawa na lang ang ATP? So ganun din yung ganun din ang explanation, no? Kanina nakaproduce siya ng 2 ATP dito, tapos nag-produce na naman siya ng 2 ATP. So all in all 4. Pero 4 ang na-produce. Pero kasi gumamit siya ng dalawa din during the first first steps and second step, kaya na-cancel out yung dalawa. Kaya sa summary, dalawa na lang yung na-produce na ATP. Okay? And for water naman, okay, dalawa yung na-produce during the during the dehydration reaction. Okay, may mga wala namang ibang water molecules na pinaggamitan during the other during in other steps aside from step 9. Okay, so that would be the summary of the glucose the summary of glycolysis wherein the glucose had been converted or transformed into 2 pyruvate.